Dr. Sharma, you claim to be a responsible party. The lawyer's voice was slick, oiled, designed to slide under your skin. Yet your service record is sealed. You claim to have been awarded the Air Force Cross, a medal for extraordinary heroism. Isn't it true you are, in fact, bound by an NDA that conveniently prevents you from proving any of it? My own lawyer jumped to his feet, a flare of genuine anger, but the judge just waved him down. She must answer. I kept my hands clasped on the table, my spine rigid. I looked past the lawyer, past the judge, to a spot on the wall. I am not at liberty to discuss the specifics of my service. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my father, Robert, a retired Army logistics officer obsessed with the tenets of honor, share a small, satisfied smirk with my brother Mark. Mark, the family's golden boy, a failing real estate agent who my father still saw as his one true legacy. Their expressions said it all. She's trapped. The lawyer leaned in, smelling blood. So you can't deny it. You hide behind classified because you're a fantasist. You don't deserve that medal, do you? My father's lawyer called me a liar in a court of law, and I couldn't utter a word to defend myself. My oath, the very thing I had sacrificed everything for, was being used as a weapon to paint me as a child. To understand how I ended up being legally gagged while my family tried to strip me of my honor, you have to go back 3 weeks, to the day they decided to save my mother. It all started in a beige mediation office. The air was thick with false concern. My mother, my sweet, brilliant mother, was fading, her mind clouded by a severe Alzheimer's diagnosis. I had spent weeks researching, pulling every string I had, and I presented a plan. It was detailed, compassionate, and medically sound, placing her in a top-tier memory care facility that I had already vetted and approved. I explained the costs, the staff-to-patient ratio, the specialized therapies. Before the mediator could even speak, Mark scoffed. A loud, dismissive sound that he'd perfected since we were kids. That place is expensive, Anya. Trying to burn through mom's money so you don't have to get a real job? I just stared at him. This, from a man who was quietly being sued by 3 different clients and hadn't closed a sale in 6 months. This, from the man I'd bailed out of a DUI charge 2 years prior. A favor he'd never mentioned again. But my father, Robert, held up a hand. The retired major, taking command of a room he didn't understand. Son, your sister is flighty. We need stability. He turned his patronizing gaze on me, the one that always made me feel about 10 years old. I am filing for full guardianship. The court will see that a retired officer and a stable businessman are the better choice over, well, he gestured at me dismissively. Her service was a glorified admin job. She couldn't hack it in a real hospital. She is unstable, and we will prove it. The mediator, a civilian, just made a note. And right there, the battle line was drawn. Their entire legal strategy wasn't just to win guardianship, it was to annihilate my character to get it. My father's dismissal was a playbook I knew by heart. I saw it in action at a family barbecue just last year. My brother Mark was holding court by the grill, a cheap framed plaque in his hand. He'd somehow made a top 30 under 30 list in the local business journal. My father Robert raised his beer, his voice booming with a pride I had never, not once, heard directed at me. To my son, Mark, he'd shouted, a real empire builder. Following in my footsteps, I was home on a rare 72-hour leave, the smell of jet fuel and sterile solutions still clinging to my skin. I tried stupidly to join the conversation, to bridge the gap. That's great, Mark, I said, my voice sounding small. Things are moving for me, too. I was just recertified on advanced trauma protocols, even led a complex field resuscitation last week. Robert just laughed. He turned to me, his eyes crinkling with that familiar, patronizing amusement. That's great, Clipboard Annie, he said, using the nickname he'd invented for me. He actually patted my head. More acronyms. Just make sure you're filing those papers right, okay? Your brother just sold a $2 million property. The whole family laughed. Not a cruel laugh, but worse. A dismissive one. The kind of laugh that says, you are not a serious person. I just stood there, the ice in my cup melting, and felt myself disappear. That was their world. Then, there was mine. 2 weeks before that barbecue, Clipboard Annie was strapped into the back of a Pavehawk helicopter. The world outside wasn't suburban green, it was a screaming, night vision green. The rotor wash was so loud it was a physical weight, pressing against my chest. I'll never forget my team leader, Master Sergeant Chief Evans, a grizzled PJ who had seen literally everything, yelling at me over the internal comms. His voice was all steel. "Doc, GCS is 3. He's got a tension pneumo and we're taking heavy ground fire. You're hot." In my family's backyard, I was a ghost. In that helicopter, I was the only person who mattered. The flighty girl my father described was gone, replaced by Doc. I was someone else entirely. Calm, authoritative, my voice cut through the chaos. "Needle D, get me an IO line, I'm pushing hex 10 now. Tell the pilot I need 5 mics, stable." I didn't ask, I commanded. The helicopter bucked, a spray of sparks flashing outside the open door as rounds skipped off the fuselage. My patient, a kid no older than 20, was dying. I put 2 fingers on his ribs, found the spot, and plunged the 14-gauge needle into his chest. There was a hiss, a gasp. His vitals stabilized on the monitor. I was covered in his blood, my hands steady, calling out vitals as the world exploded around us. When we landed, Chief just put a hand on my shoulder, his face grim. "Good work, Doc," he said. "You just bought him his life." This was the duality I lived. In one world, I was Clipboard Annie, a child playing dress-up with a glorified admin job. I was the irrelevant black sheep, a footnote in my brother's story of empire building. In the other world, the real world, I was Doc. I held life and death in my hands in the back of a flying tin can, and men like Chief Evans, men my father would consider real soldiers, trusted me with their lives. For years, I kept those worlds separate. I let my family have their narrative. I let them think I was a failure, a flighty girl who couldn't hack it. It was easier than fighting. It was simpler. But now, in that courtroom, they had made a critical mistake. They had dragged my world, the real world, into theirs. They were using my silence, an oath I had sworn to protect my country, as proof of their lies. My father believed my silence was weakness. He thought my sealed record was a blank page he could write his own story on. He was about to learn that those seals don't just protect secrets, they protect heroes. Anya. Their case is slander, but it's infective. My lawyer, a good man named David, looked exhausted. He ran his hands through his hair, his desk covered in my family's motions. "They filed a motion painting you as a dishonorable fantasist. And this gag order, the judge is taking it seriously. You can't talk about your service, so we can't use it. My hands are tied." I sat there perfectly still. He was right. My father and brother were using my entire career, my sacrifices, my oath, as a blunt instrument against me. The anger was there, a cold, hard knot in my stomach. But underneath it, something else was clicking into place. Years of training. Years of solving impossible problems under fire. My mind wasn't on the emotion anymore. It was on protocol. "You're right," I said, my voice quiet. David looked up, surprised by my calmness. "And can't talk about it. My oath is to the government, not to this court." A spark ignited in my lawyer's eyes. "But the citation for my Air Force Cross is public record. It's vague, but it's public, and the men who were there, they aren't bound by my specific NDA. "A character witness," David said, the words hanging in the air. "Not just a character witness," I replied, my voice hardening. "A material witness. A witness to the very fantasy they're attacking." That night, I went home. I didn't pace. I didn't cry. I sat down at my laptop, opened a secure contact list, and found the one name I needed. Master Sergeant D. Evans. Chief. I made one call, not to my old chain of command, but to my former team leader. The man who had been there. My voice was steady. "Chief, it's Doc. I'm in a family court matter." I explained the situation. the fight for my mother. And then I told him the part that mattered. They're saying Ente was a lie. They're telling a judge I'm a fantasist. There was a long silence on the line, just breathing. When Chief finally spoke, his voice was gravel and steel, a sound that could stop bullets. Give me the time and place, Doc, I'll be there. They want to talk about me that day? Let's talk about it. My father had requested a public hearing to maximize my humiliation. He thought he was inviting the world to watch me break. He had no idea who he had actually invited. We were back in the courtroom. My father, Robert, was on the stand for his final statement, and he was performing. He leaned toward the judge, his face a mask of false fatherly concern. Your Honor, I love my daughter, I truly do, but she's lost. She lives in this fantasy world of secret missions. It's not honorable, Your Honor. It's a sickness. He pointed a shaking finger at me. My own father. The man who called me Clipboard Annie. That's why I'm asking you to make her return that medal. His voice rose, cracking with manufactured outrage. The one she parades around. She needs help. She don't deserve it. I flinched. The words hit me like a physical blow. This was it. The ultimate humiliation. I was bound by my oath, unable to say a single word. My father, the retired logistics major who never saw a day of combat, was slandering my Air Force cross in a court of law. I just sat there, silent, gagged. Then my lawyer stood up, his voice cutting through the silence. Your Honor, the defense calls one character witness, Master Sergeant David Evans. The courtroom doors at the back of the room opened, and in walked Chief. He wasn't in civilian clothes. He was in his full, immaculate Air Force service dress uniform. His chest was a constellation of medals. The Purple Heart, multiple bronze stars, the Air Medal. Every ribbon told a story my father had only read about in books. I watched my father. He stopped breathing. His face went from smug to confused to ashen. He was a retired major, and he instantly recognized the rank, the bearing, and the gravity of the man walking down that aisle. He knew in that single gut-wrenching moment that this was not a character witness. This was an unauthority. Master Sergeant Evans stood tall as he was sworn in. His presence changed the entire atmosphere of the room. My lawyer asked, Master Sergeant, how do you know the respondent, Dr. Sharma? Chief looked at my lawyer, then turned his steel-gray eyes to the judge. I don't, sir. I know Doc. A murmur went through the court. Your Honor, I was Doc's pararescue team leader for 3 tours. Her father, that man right there, says she's unstable. I was with her on Operation Black Fog. My father's lawyer shot to his feet. Objection. Classified. Chief didn't even look at him. He kept his eyes on the judge. I am not discussing classified details, sir. I am discussing the facts of the medal you just brought into evidence. The judge leaned forward, his eyes narrowed. Overruled. Proceed, Master Sergeant. Chief's voice filled the room. It was the same voice I'd heard in the back of the Pavehawk. We were ambushed. My entire team was pinned down in a dry riverbed. Dr. Sharma, left a position of cover, ran 50 meters under direct and heavy machine gun fire and shielded my dying radio man with her own body, while she performed a field thoracotomy. In the dirt, with rounds impacting all around her, he paused, his hand unconsciously touching his own chest. She took shrapnel to her back and shoulder. She never stopped working. She never even flinched. I looked at my father. His world was collapsing. His Clipboard Annie narrative was being vaporized by a living legend. My brother, Mark, just stared, his mouth hanging open. Chief's voice suddenly cracked, the iron in it turning raw. His voice was shaking. You're debating if she deserves a medal? He pointed at himself. That radioman she saved. That boy she shielded with her own body. It was me. Without her, I wouldn't be here today. Absolute, stunning silence. The judge, a man who I'm sure had seen everything, slowly took off his glasses. He turned his head away from the court for a moment, and he wiped away a tear. He put his glasses back on. His face was no longer just serious. It was ice. He turned to my father. "Major Jensen, retired, you have the nerve to come into my court, in the presence of a true decorated hero, and slander the service of another? This petition is summarily dismissed. Guardianship is granted to Dr. Sharma, and I am referring your testimony, and that of your son, to the district attorney's office. For a full review on charges of perjury and slander of a service member's record, my father had spent my entire life teaching me the importance of rank and reputation. In the end, it only took 2 minutes for a real man of honor to strip him of both." The courtroom emptied out, but the echo of the judge's gavel seemed to hang in the air. My father and my brother Mark were still sitting at their table, frozen. They looked like statues. Gray, hollowed-out statues. Their lawyer was whispering frantically to them, shuffling papers, his own professional sheen completely gone. They were ruined. My father, the man who lived for the dumb appearance of honor, had just been publicly labeled a perjurer by a judge. The irony was so thick I could barely breathe it. Then, I heard the sound of polished boots on the floor. Master Sergeant Evans walked over to me. He stood there for a second, the constellation of medals on his chest seeming to pulse with light. He didn't say a word. He just stood directly in front of me, locked his eyes on mine, and snapped to the sharpest, most perfect salute I have ever seen. It was a gesture of respect so profound, so earned, it vibrated in my bones. I stood up and as a civilian simply gave him a deep, respectful nod. It was an entire conversation without a single word. He held the salute for one more beat, then spun on his heel and was gone. I picked up my bag. I looked one last time at the wreckage of my family. My father finally looked up, his eyes meeting mine. There was no anger, no sadness, just a terrible, empty bewilderment. He didn't understand. He still didn't understand who I was. I turned my back on them. I walked out of the courtroom alone, leaving them to face the consequences they had built, lie by lie. 6 months later, I was sitting in a sun-drenched room, the scent of lavender and clean linen in the air. I was reading aloud from an old novel, my voice low and calm. My mother, her hand in mine, was sleeping peacefully. Her face, once etched with the fear and confusion of her illness, was finally calm. She was safe. She was cared for. This was my new normal. Not the chaos of helicopters, not the sterile hostility of a courtroom, just peace, control. This was the victory. My phone buzzed quietly on the table. I had transitioned. I was still in the reserves, but my active duty days were behind me. I was now Dr. Anya Sharma, the lead trauma surgeon at a level 1 trauma center. I glanced at the screen. It was a text from my charge nurse. "Dr. Sharma, code black. Mass casualty incoming. ETA 5 mins. Need you in the bay." I felt the old, familiar click in my brain. The world sharpening. No panic, no adrenaline spike, just focus. I gently squeezed my mother's hand and kissed her forehead. "I'll be back tonight, Mom," I whispered. I stood up and strode out of the room. As I moved down the hospital corridor, my pace quickening, nurses and residents saw me coming. They didn't ask questions. They just fell into step beside me, calling out reports, anticipating my needs. "Trauma 1 and 2 are prepped," one said. "Blood bank is cross-matching 20 units ONEG," said another. I wasn't clipboard Annie. I wasn't Doc. I was the authority. This was my team. I reached the scrub sinks, the water roaring to life. As I began the methodical ritual cleansing of my hands, I saw my phone light up again on the shelf. It was an email. My fingers dripped soap suds as I leaned in to look. The sender was my father. The subject line, "Anya, please." I paused, the water running over my hands. I read the preview text. "Anya, the DA is pressing charges. Mark could. I didn't know. They're talking about jail time. Please, you have to help us." I stood there for a long beat, just reading his words. I waited for the anger, the pain, the old, familiar sting of betrayal. I waited for the satisfaction, the "I told you so." But nothing came. It was like reading a weather report from a city I'd left years ago. I thought of all the years I had craved a single word of acknowledgement from him. All the times I'd been dismissed for Mark. All the quiet humiliations at BBQs and family dinners. All of it led to this. A desperate plea from a man who had tried to destroy me to save the son who was a hollow shell of his own making. My father was a retired major who thought honor was a title. Chief Evans was a master sergeant who knew it was an action. My father had taught me what honor wasn't. Chief had shown me what it was. I looked at the message. I saw the desperation, the fear, the lifetime of bad choices all culminating in a single pathetic request. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was asking for an intervention. He was asking Clipboard Annie to file one more piece of paper for him, to make it all go away. I finished scrubbing my hands. I rinsed them, turned off the water, and picked up the sterile towel. With my other hand, I picked up my phone, my thumb hovering over the screen. Then, with a simple, final tap, I hit delete. I didn't even read the full message. I dropped the towel in the bin and pushed open the doors to the trauma bay. My real life, my real work, was waiting. My father spent his life demanding respect, while my brother tried to inherit it. They never understood that honor isn't something you can take or be given. It's something you bleed for, in the moments when no one is watching. If you've ever had to fight to prove your worth to people who refuse to see it, share your story below. In this community, your expertise is always recognized.